Okay, so we'll begin. What we've done so far is an introduction to Hilchos Niddah, one of the most important areas of Halacha in the Shuchan Aruch. This area of Halacha has always been relevant from time immemorial because Niddah is an Isur D'Oraisa. In other words, it relates to an area in Jewish life that not only concerns impurities of all sorts. During the time we had a Beis HaMikdash, where a woman during her menstrual cycle would be tameh, would be unclean, and she would not be able to contact or to touch, that is, in foods, enter certain places. But here we're dealing with another area that also relates to marital relationships. For some people who are not very familiar with it, who are not because they're Balei Tshuvas, this somewhat presents a challenge because it requires for the husband and wife to be separated a little bit, not that much, separated, of course, no intimate alike. And because of the many halachas and many details that are required for one to know, it is something that should be learned before one gets married. Of course, one can always learn it even after he's married, but it's important that he get married knowing certain basics. And as we've explained in the past, the woman has a greater responsibility of being tracked than the man does because it's her body, and she has to be aware of certain things. And there are situations that arise from time to time that are question marks. What do you do now? What's this? And of course, for that, one may need to consult with a rabbi. And as we will be learning Hilchos Niddah, I'm going to talk about those situations where you really need to consult. You don't take it upon yourself to make a decision, because we're talking about a Isur Chorus. God forbid, if a husband and wife intentionally, knowingly, were involved with each other during the time that she's a Niddah, it's a very severe sin, which the Torah says there is chorus. A person's life can be shortened as a result of that, or there could be other consequences, unless of course tshuva is done. Not knowing about it is like many other sins that were done not knowingly, required for them to bring a korban chatas during the time that they would bring a sacrifice. Still, it's a very uncomfortable situation, not pleasant situation, knowing that one committed a tremendous wrong. And of course, we're not going to go into the why. Why is this so serious? If the Torah tells us that something is serious, for us it's enough. We have complete faith in Hashem, who created the world. And when He tells us that non-kosher food is not good for your neshama, it's forbidden, we accept it. And as I've explained when we talked about that area of halacha, that it has nothing to do with health matters. Kosher food or non-kosher food is an area called a chok. A chok is a decree. It's not an ordinary, logical, common sense mitzvah that, like honor your father and your mother. Well, that's common sense. Don't steal. That's common sense. There's many common sense, logical mitzvahs or averos. Niddah is a chok. And even though it very possibly has some additional health benefits, perhaps, many other good things that could come out of the husband and wife being apart from each other, the reasons as we've given so far, the logical reasons, the simple reasons, have to do with creating a stronger bond between the husband and wife during the time there's. But that's just the separation. We need to, before we begin the halachas, it would be a good idea for us to get into the biology a little bit and to understand what is exactly happening to a woman, what exactly is menstrual cycle. And this could help us not only understand the anatomy of the human being, but the incredible hashgacha, where we can see from the small details that could not just have happened by itself. For those who believe in evolution, Big Bang, how do you explain all of this? I mean, it's an incredible mechanism by which a woman goes through certain stages, and every one of those stages is needed in order to bring about conception and of course pregnancy and childbirth. Eventually a new life is born as a result of all these stages. So Hilchos Niddah is a difficult area of halacha because there's of course, not just the challenges, there's just a lot of halachas. Maseches Niddah, the Gemara, is considered one of the most difficult Gemaras in Talmud Bavli, along with Eruvin and Yevamos. And as you may guess, not too many people are excited to learn Maseches Niddah, not only because of the difficulties, it's because I guess it's not as exciting as a bull having gored someone, or some other Masechtas with some issues that are more common.
Pages and pages and pages about how you calculate.
Yeah, and of course there's some math. There's some math about it too. Yeah, but anyway, it's a very, very important area. Let's just put it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's just go a little bit into the biology. Menstruation. The menstruation cycle is something that affects just about every woman from the time the girl is about 11 years old. 12 to 13 is more common, but some girls have it earlier, some later, but that's the average. And it lasts till approximately the age of 51. I'm talking about averages. It can be 60 as well. Women have given birth at 60, as we will talk about that a little bit later. The menstrual cycle is directly related to the ability to be conceived and give birth. So as long as a woman is menstruating, she can give birth, technically. So a young girl getting her menstrual cycle at 11, 12, 13 is quite normal. It is expected. It is a good sign. And even though she may not know what's happening to her, what's all this all about, it is the normal thing for her to experience at that stage in her life. Even though a woman will menstruate throughout 30 to 40 years of her life, there are times that she may not. During the time she's supposed to. One of those is she's pregnant or nursing. What does that mean? It means that she may not necessarily become pregnant so soon after giving birth if she's nursing. This is something the rabbis tell us, and this is something that modern medicine has more or less admitted that it's true. They agree with this, but they say there's no guarantee. Okay, fine. Even though there's no guarantee, a woman who is nursing for a little bit of time, she's not going to become pregnant. She will not necessarily get her period back, but as long as she's nursing. Now, pregnancy, even though it's true that after a woman becomes pregnant and the fetus begins to grow, she will not ordinarily have her period. She can still have bleeding. Important to know. Because bleeding, almost any form of bleeding, unless it's from a wound, and it can be determined that it's such, and it's not from the same location where menstrual blood or discharge comes from, if it's an injury, it's fine. It will not render her unclean. But if it is not an injury, but it is from the same location where she usually gets her discharge or monthly period, that will render her unclean even though she's pregnant. So these are halachas that we will encounter later when we deal with, actually as of next week, when we need to talk about her period. How does she calculate her period? When can she assume that she's not getting her period if she's pregnant? Oh, she can always get a test. But after a normal amount of days have elapsed where she's not getting her period, it's possible that could be menopause, too old already, or it could be of some sort of irregularity too. There are some irregular periods. Usually women have it on the average every 28 days. And it varies between 28 and 35. It could be short, it could be longer. And I did see an article about longer periods being beneficial for those having in vitro, the in vitro procedure of becoming pregnant. That's an interesting area. Many people, unfortunately, are having trouble getting pregnant, women that is, and they have to go through all kinds of procedures. So some of them have a better chance getting pregnant than others, depending on So knowing about a period, knowing the woman who knows her body, knows about her period, it could help her in many, many ways. It could help her. Some of them, of course, use a kit for this to know when she has ovulated. Ovulation is that part of I guess you can call it part of the cycle where the early stages of pregnancy can potentially occur. I say early stages of pregnancy because you need ovulation, obviously. It doesn't mean because there's ovulation there will be pregnancy. One of the problems that women run into is that the ideal time to become pregnant is so short, and by the time she comes back from the mikvah, there's only 1 day left from the time she ovulated to the time where pregnancy can take place. And that presents a certain set of challenges, halachic as well, as to what to do if a woman can never become pregnant as a result of having the ovulation occur at a certain time when she's still unclean, and by the time she comes out of the mikveh, it's gone. I mean, the time a woman is fertile enough and can become pregnant is very, very short. So Bezrat Hashem, we will talk about what to do, what are the options to do. Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva about this. There are other rabbis who have written all kinds of solutions, halachic solutions, and how to deal with this problem. Even though we have the standard halacha of how long a man and woman need to be apart, there are ways around it. But we'll have to leave it for later on. Just in case you're interested, the amount of blood a woman sees and the length of time that she will see that blood will also vary. But on the average, a woman will have, I think, about 35 milliliters of blood during a period, which is about 2.5 if you really want to know that. And she will have it anywhere between 3 to 5 days. And that's important because, as we spoke about last week, the time, yeah, about, it ranges from 10 to 80, from what I recall. Yeah, right, it's a big range, yeah.
And 35 would be 2.5 tablespoons.
And speaking about the discharge, people think it's blood. It's not exactly 100% blood the way we know blood is. It's not that kind of a thing. It is a combination of all kinds of things that come out of her body. So it's a discharge. It's different fluids. It's a discharge that comes out of her body that contains blood too, but it's not only blood. All right. Now, this blood that we will be talking about today that is unclean, it makes no difference whether the girl is 1 day old. It has nothing to do with the age of the woman. If I remember correctly, the Rif says that even if it's a non-Jewish woman, it's still unclean. So regardless of how old the woman is, how old she's not Jewish, if it's Dam Niddah, it's Dam Niddah. The only thing is that we have to determine is this really the real thing? Where did it come from? That's going to be one of the main questions that has to be. Where did this?
We have to determine.
We need to determine where it came from.
We can't.
We're going to talk about it today. Where did it come from? Did she feel it coming? Okay, and the coloration of it. All right. These are pretty much the things that have to be determined to decide if this woman is a Niddah or not. Now, I made it sound like we always have to determine that. We don't always, because there's something called a period. There's something that is automatic, almost natural, that she's going to experience almost every month. So we're going to assume, based on the various factors, that that's Dam Niddah. And that's what we'll be learning today. Today is the Siman Kuf Pei Gimel, which is the first Siman, in dealing with the time that a woman sees the blood. What exactly determines if this blood is blood or non-clean blood. Okay, so let's begin. Before I read the Sif inside, I'll just tell you a little bit of background from the Gemara. Because all of these halachas, what is this halacha? This halacha is taken from the conclusions of the Gemara, or the conclusions of the poskim, the Rishonim. Because not everything is spelled out clearly in the Gemara, so we have the Rambam, we have the Rashba, and others who elaborate further on the additional details of them. So in Maseches Niddah, the Gemara there speaks about a word that appears in the Torah in describing the Niddah, that appears to be an extra word. And as you know, every word is there for a reason. It could be for this drasha, could be for something else, and that is where a lot of Torah Shabbal Peh, the oral word, is taken from. It's taken from all kinds of drashas that the rabbis received by tradition, Halacha l'Moshe Missinai, or that they inferred, or to interpret. And they said from the word bivsoro, in her flesh, that if a woman sees blood in her flesh, why say in her flesh? What is the word bivsoro coming to teach us? So the drasha, even though that word does have several drashas, one drasha is that a woman midoraisa, according to the Torah, does not become unclean unless she felt the blood coming out. She has to have felt it coming out of her body. Now, what does it mean, coming out? In the Torah, in the pasuk that describes the Niddah. Yeah, I'll get it for you a little bit later on. Okay, where did this blood come from? That she sees all of a sudden blood, or feels, I should say, blood coming out. So let's go back to the biology. Okay, we said a woman menstruates, but what exactly has happened? So we've explained it very simply. I could really take it apart and begin by describing what the fallopian tubes are, what the ovaries are, but there's no need for that. We're not learning the whole biology here. But it is important to keep in mind that there is a membrane, which we spoke about, that is formed once a month.
Do you want the Torah and the Torah?
If you have the pasuk there, yeah.
He has two psukim, Vayikra.
Sefer Vayikra,
Yeah.
chapter 15, right? Verse 19.
And there it says, Vayishak
Right.
Shivat Yamim. So it's the end.
Right. That was one pasuk. The second one is,
Okay.
but the second one is with Zava, not with Niddah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that pasuk is in Vayikra, as we mentioned. Okay, so anyway, so here, but what we do want to know about is about that membrane that the body is setting up to receive the egg. Hopefully, that will be fertilized, and from where the fetus will develop. If there's no pregnancy, it falls apart. It falls apart, and that is where you see the flow of blood and everything else with it coming out of the woman's body. Now, all of this, where is this taking place? Yeah, all of this is taking place in a place called the uterus. Another word for the uterus is the womb. Pretty much the same thing. That's where this all takes place. Now, the uterus is not a place that we could see, of course. It's internal. And that is where the child develops. That is where pregnancy takes, and that is where the child grows. This uterus is connected to the outer part of the woman's body, what we call the vagina, through something called the cervix. Right? These words in English have, of course, terms in Hebrew. The cervix, for example, is called a prosdor, hallway, because it looks like that. It connects the outer part of the body with the inner part, or let's call it the inner chamber. Even though the chamber is called really the aliyah, or the aliyah means the attic, the upper chamber. So the Chachamim described all of this in great detail, not because they were teaching biology so much, but because we have to determine if this blood, depending where it comes from, is unclean or not. Where did it come from? And when we talk about stains, that stain could have come from a cockroach. Yeah, it could have come from ketchup. It could have come from cleaning, I don't know, chicken. So, and that's stains. Stains is a whole different area. But here too, maybe she hurt herself somewhere. The doctor poked her in there to check her out. Where did he poke? This could make a world of a difference. Is she tamid? Oh no, another 11, 12 days just because he poked her? You see what I mean? So the Chachamim had to, at least at that time, today halacha is a little bit different, to differentiate between where he was from, not only to teach us the halacha, as to which one is tamid, which one is not, but to actually explain to us that it is very possibly not always from the mekor, and that's the key word today, the word mekor. Mekor, the blood coming from the mekor, is the blood that is tameh. Mekor meaning from the source meaning the uterus. Okay, so here we're talking about blood coming from the uterus as opposed to other places. For example, the upper chamber above that, or from somewhere on the sides of the, or as it's called in Hebrew, the kotel, the wall of the lower chamber, of that part of the woman's body which is towards the exit, and not all the way up in the area of the womb. So that can make a world of a difference. Is where is that blood coming from? So they learned, the drasha number 1, that from the word divsara, we learn that the woman midoraisa can only become unclean. She feels there was a hargasha. And now we opened up a can of worms. Hargasha? Oh, what does that mean? What is she feeling? Did she really feel? What if she doesn't remember if she felt? But before we get to that everybody is in agreement that there needs to be midoraisa, a hargasha. The woman had to have felt something in order for her to become tmeya midoraisa. And I say midoraisa because midorabanan, as the Shach points out, you don't need for her to feel anything. Midorabanan, she's going to be unclean if she sees that blood coming out, even though she never felt it actually coming out. It's midorabanan, yeah.
But on the other hand, so it has a
of course, but it could make a difference if something is the Rabbana or the Raisa.
I'm just saying, a decision
Sure, but the Rabbanan, it's important for us to know. Yeah, so it's important when something is a Derabanan, if there's additional sfeikas, like we learned in Taaruvot, when you have additional sfeikas, and this is a Derabanan, then there could be some leniency. A woman is having a hard time becoming pregnant, and so forth. All kinds of situations where there are difficulties, there's sfeikas, and there's doubts. Exactly. No, so we'll talk about it, especially when we get to stains, because stains are all Derabanan, pretty much. Now, another drasha of Bifsora is that the dam that's coming from the uterus is tome as soon as it flows out of the uterus, even though it hasn't come out of the body. As opposed to Zav of it, or Balkeri, their impurity, their tuma does not render them tome unless it came out of the body, physically came out of the body. By Niddah, even if it stayed behind, somehow she felt the blood coming out, she checks, nothing came out yet. She's not clean. Do you know that a woman, right before she gives birth, she dilates? For those of you who know a little bit about childbirth, she opens up. As soon as it begins to dilate just a little bit, the husband can't touch her. She's a Niddah. There's no blood yet. And we'll talk about that eventually. Why is that? There doesn't always have to be blood for her to become Tmeya. It could very possibly be that she has her period and she hasn't seen the blood yet. Even though, of course, she's not clean unless she felt something. And we will be learning eventually an interesting halacha. What happens if she felt it but she doesn't see the blood? Or, in this case, we're learning the opposite. She sees the blood but she didn't feel it. Or, what happens if the only way she knows she's bleeding is when she sticks something inside? Or, she sees blood all of a sudden after she's intimate with her husband. All of a sudden, oh no, she's bleeding. How did that happen? She's not expecting it, of course, otherwise she would be with her husband. So how did she come to see blood? What, did he injure her? That's a possibility, And we're not talking about dam besulim. Eventually we'll talk about a woman who, for the first time, her besulim are I guess, broken. Forgot the other word. Ruptured.
Very good.
Yes. Okay. That's something else. Dam besulim is not dam for the makor. But guess what? Today, the Chachamim tell us we're not such experts in knowing between dam tome and dam tohar. There is something called dam tohar, clean blood, that a yoledes, a woman who has given birth, has. She's not having her menstrual cycle when she's giving birth. Nevertheless, because we are not experts in determining what's clean blood versus not clean blood, uterus blood or cervix blood, or upper chamber blood, we don't really know where it always came from, then we're going to say that she's probably Tmeya. Unless we can know. Now there are times you can ask the doctor if he's reliable, is from, can you tell me exactly where you poked her? Or did you poke her? And where's this blood coming from? Sometimes you can check. Yeah.
Is that also there's some
Midrabanan.
There is.
Yeah, there is, but it's less time than a regular Niddah.
Separate right away, or how does it work?
No. Once they're done. Once they're done. The done meaning not after 2 seconds. After, as we say it in fancy English, after the marriage has been fully consummated. Is that right?
And on the what does that mean? On the what?
There's no. If you want to be more technical, until the man has lost the rigidity. Yeah, I have to be a little bit more tactful. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So
and it's in the term of halacha is ever mit.
So you also that also not.
I don't know.
Rigidity.
Yeah, I don't know. As soon as that has finished, in other words, there's no reason anymore to be together.
And then they have to hold.
Then they have to sleep in a separate beds. Chas and Kala have to be in separate beds, unless, of course, she's not a virgin.
Right? What if she sees blood anyway?
If she's not a virgin, she sees blood. That's going to be
even worse.
That could be even worse. Yeah. Why is she seeing blood? She shouldn't. But it could be coming from some injury, either she had from before, or from now something happened. So all of these things have to be looked into before we say, "Oh, for sure you're tameh." Chas v'shalom, you don't want to tell a woman you're unclean. Why take a chance? You know why? Because if she is separated from her husband and cannot get pregnant as a result of the rabbi telling her the wrong information, that rabbi has prevented a child from coming into this world perhaps. Even though we're strict, we have to be careful not to be over strict. That's why you need somebody who knows about this area to really be careful in giving the right information. And this is especially true when she sees a discharge and you say, well, this is not blood, or is it? It's green. Well, we have halachas about colors. And it's only somebody who has had a little bit of experience that can tell you black is for sure a problem. Black and red are related as far as dam niddah is concerned. Potentially brown as well, depending on the shade. But yellow, green, that could be some other fluid. Who says it's blood? It's usually not. So we want to be careful what we tell the woman who comes, the stain on her piece of cotton, or, she doesn't have it, but she tells you this is what I saw, which makes it more difficult. Yeah.
Does one become trained based on the color?
Other than learning the halachas, one has to have a little experience. Many times, women, they don't clean themselves well before they begin a period of 7 clean. And if she's not completely clean, seeing some leftover dirt, and it's not really blood. And what happens is, a woman has 11 or 12 days where she's apart, and she can only start her 7 clean days, where there's no stains allowed, after the blood is no longer there. So she checks herself right before sundown to make sure that there's no more blood on the 4th or 5th day, right? And then she begins that night to count the 7 clean days. She did not clean herself well, check herself well. It could be that she's just dirty. And then she's losing a day, because she will not be able to start. If somebody says, oh, that's blood, instead of that's dirt, she won't be starting her 7 clean days till 1 day later. That means they're also apart an extra day. And she may not become pregnant as a result of that. You see what I mean? So she better know what she's doing. She do it right, not forget to check herself, right? So she can start counting as soon as halacha permits her to count the 7 clean, so she can go to the mikveh and at the right time. But if she makes a mistake, she forgets, she doesn't do things right, or some person told her the wrong information, that month may be wasted. She could have become pregnant then. So it's critical that it be done right. All right, so that is the emphasis on the word bivesoro, that the dam niddah is metame as soon as it leaves the mekor, and that it can only be from the mekor. It can only be when she feels it, that is, and not if she didn't feel it, but that's only midaraisa. Okay, what is hargasha? How does hargasha come about? How does a woman feel? Since we said feeling makes a big difference, what is she supposed to feel? How does it feel? So there's different opinions in this area of feeling, hargasha. The Rambam seems to be saying that the body trembles a little bit. In other words, there's something happening in the body. It's a feeling similar or close to like going to the bathroom, urinating. But it's a little bit of a stronger feeling. He says, gufan nizdaze'ah. She begins to shudder a little bit. And that is how she knows that the blood came out. Most poskim hold that what actually happens is that she felt, and she has to have felt, that the mekor just opened up. Something opened up in her. Not that her body shuddered or trembled or anything like that. It's just that she actually has a feeling, and I guess some women feel it, some don't, that something opened up. And that is what was meant by feeling. Which means if she didn't have that feeling, that means she's not Tamid Daraisa. So this could make a big difference. Again, today it's Midrabanan, makes no difference. But Midaraisa, she would have had to feel, according to most poskim, that something opened up. The Yore Deah, the Chavas Das, they bring their opinion on how they understood this hargasha to mean. They actually feel something flowing in her. That's hargasha. Hargasha means to feel. Well, what should she feel? So they say a regular feeling is the flow of blood. The only difference between these last two achrayim is that the Yore Deah says even if she felt that flow just in the cervix, not further up, it was way below, that's sufficient. That's called hargasha, he says. Whereas the Chavas Des says no, the flow has to be from where it begins. Anyway, the Chasam Sofer makes it very clear though. we don't consider the flow to be a hargasha. That's not hargasha. Hargasha is something opening in her, something that's very unique to the body, other than just a flow of a liquid streaming down the body. That's not the hargasha that we're talking about. That the midoraisa for her to have felt means that she felt something open up. That's all. Okay, so the question is raised today. And this question was asked to Rabbi Elyahu, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. This question is mentioned in the Eliezer. What are women supposed to do? Well, even though we know what the Rabbanan is. Okay, but still, let's say today most women don't really feel at the first second that something opened up. Is that possible for them to become Tamid D'Oraisa? That's the question asked. Now again, not Midrabanan, because once they see the blood, they're blind. They see the blood. But what about, is it still possible for them today, since I think just about the majority of women don't feel something happening in their body, could they still become Tamid D'Oraisa? During the time of the Vesa, during the time of the period, that is. So he says that Tzitz Eliezer says that any major change in the woman's body during the time of her period is called Hargasha min Torah. Anything that she sees or feels, or it doesn't necessarily have to be this or that. So he says, therefore, that today, since that is the way most women have their period, they don't necessarily feel something. Anything that happens to their body that is a change in their body would render them Tmei Midoraisa. Rabbi Elyahu, I think, just says it a little bit differently. He says that the reason why Hargasha was important and why it was emphasized is because if she did not have any Hargasha min Torah, right, she would not be Tmeya. But that only applied to women who regularly have Hargasha. In other words, he says, yes, Hargasha is important because without it, it's not Tamid D'Oraisa. But that only relates to women who would usually have Hargasha, and once they did not, then they're not Tamid. But what if a woman never has Hargasha? He says, what if a woman never feels anything? But every month she has blood, she's Tmeya anyway. So that's what Rabbi Elyahu explained, that today you don't need Hargasha. Yeah. In other words, if she always sees without Hargasha, then she's always a Raisa.
But there's no Hargasha.
What?
So you lose blood if there's no Hargasha.
If it's during her period.
During
That's
her
a very important point. Since you raise this, let me just say something else. Well, you know what? We'll talk about it when we read it inside. When we read it inside, I'll explain something that's very interesting that could happen when it's not her period. But for now, Rabbi Elyahu basically says, women who never feel anything, so it's basically, that's the way they have their dam. So it's always dam d'oraisa. That's interesting. I don't really, what I was almost tempted to do, but I was thinking, wasn't really going to do it, is perhaps we need to interview women. I haven't done it, and I'm not about to do it either.
You can let me know.
Yeah. But but that's what sometimes is necessary, is to get an idea of what are they feeling, what's going on, has their bodies changed, has nature changed. There is something in the Gemara about nature having changed.
Yeah.
No, people have changed for the past 2,000 years. I mean, it's not the same, right? There are quite a few changes.
Now,
Yeah.
are you looking at specific Jewish, non-Jewish? It
Doesn't matter. No, there is a difference between American and Russian and Indian and Israeli with respect to the whole subject of menstruation, age, quantity, length. There appears to be some differences. Yeah, I've read about that. Major? No, but some differences. They have seen that's in some women. It could be for all kinds of reasons. Their period is shorter. The average, I think we said, was 28 days. For some, it could be less. For some, it could be more. That also depends on the age, by the way. From up until the age of 25, it's very irregular. When we say irregular, by the way, what we mean is a week or more difference. If a woman sees every 28 days, but sometimes 26, sometimes 30, that's not very irregular. A little bit irregular. What if a woman sees once 28, once 20? Once 35, that's irregular, and that also happens with age. After 40 especially, it goes back to being irregular.
You're talking about length of it.
Not so much the length.
Or
The,
would
the,
you only call
the
it
length
irregular
also,
length?
the length could also vary, because I think in the earlier years they see more blood than later on.
Irregular or
No, that's not irregular, because either way we have to wait our 4 or 5 days, regardless of how many days she, which we'll learn eventually. Why is it that we wait 5 days? She only sees blood 1 day, 2 days. Why wait 5 before she begins to her count her 7 clean days? We'll talk about it. I don't want to get too much information at once, so we'll leave it to when we get to it.
Even if you have C-section, these things changes.
Oh yeah, sure, surgery, yeah, sure. And you know what happens to a woman who has her uterus removed, which
no
is
idea.
no.
Don't see you. No.
I mean, and that is called a sectomy.
Oh, bisectomy?
No, that's not fun.
Something else.
Anyway, look it up for me. Removal of the uterus.
No.
Hysterectomy. Thank you. Yeah. And in hysterectomy, there's different levels or grades of hysterectomy. You remove all the tubes, you remove more, you remove less, and God forbid, you know why they need to remove that. I mean, Shmor, that could be because of some cancer of the ovaries, cancer of the cervix. And once a woman's uterus is removed, she cannot get pregnant anymore. She doesn't have her period. Technically, she can be still she still has her menstrual. It's not the same, depending on if the ovaries are still there or not. But anyway, it's a very interesting area, this whole thing, this whole topic. But it helps us understand. And you know what I'm told by my wife? Every time I teach these halachas, I become more sensitive towards her. Because when you start seeing what goes on and what's important to them and what they feel and what happens to them before and after, you begin to understand that this is a different birya. Hashem created something here that is very different than the man. This is the vessel that Hashem created that will bring new life into the world, even though that's in partnership with the man, but she's the one that carries it for 9 months. She will be nursing it. She will be raising it. This woman is not built like a man. And forgive me for using the example of Toyotas are not Chevys, but just to pick it. We're both human, but women will have, and they sometimes can know if they're getting their period by certain feelings that they get, cramps, pain, and we'll talk about that, because that could be a little helpful in figuring out if she's getting it now. Can a man approach his wife then? But it helps, of course, when the Veset is regular, which is, of course, next week's Siman, which is the more complicated Siman, and that is about Veset, about periods.
Was all this thing Chava?
No. Remember, this all happened on the day they were created. Everything happened on that day. So from point 0, she doesn't have it. After that, she has it. Yeah.
The self, that's something different?
Right. It's the body going through all kinds of sensations, which happens at menopause too. The woman begins to feel something. And by the way, when I say pain or feelings or sensations, some of it is emotional. It's not just physical pain going through their body. They actually sense something is happening to them. Chemical changes, yeah. And again, we didn't go through all the details, but it's quite detailed of what is happening in this body, what is being produced by the body just to get the baby, potential new life, to come out. What the body is doing at that time, what's happening behind the scenes. Scientists are only discovering this lately. They are able to measure, they're able to see into the body, which they were never able to do before. And they still don't know everything. So it's incredible. All right, so real briefly, what happens if she felt something, but she didn't see any blood? That's Siman Kuf Tzadik. Later on, that's a very important halacha. What happens? She felt, but she didn't see any blood. So we'll leave that for later on. All right, but as far as the question, she did not feel and she sees blood, and that seeing of the blood happened after either she went to the bathroom, after she checked herself, or after intimacy with her husband. In other words, she did not have a feeling of the blood coming out. This is not her regular period, but she did observe blood coming out after one of those 3 events. she went to the bathroom, she checked herself inside internally, or she was involved, or she was with her husband. So for that, there's various opinions on how do we treat that. And the reason why that is a little bit of a area of contention of machloket is because there is one way of understanding the Gemara that talks about this as saying her hargasha really is there, but she's attributing it to urinating, for example. She says, well, I did feel something, but I think that was this. I think that it was me checking, or it was my husband, or something like that. In other words, it could be, as one opinion says, that hargasha really happens. It really happened at that time, but she's simply attributing to something else. So because something else happened, either she urinated, either she checked herself, or that, the question is that a deraisa or a derabbanan? So some say that even the Rambam would agree that this is a deraisa because it could be that feeling she claims she has, and she has some sort of feeling because she in the bathroom or she checked herself, is really camouflaging or covering up the other feeling that she really is having, and that's the real hargasha. So having any one of those things happen to her, in other words, having blood as a result of any one of those three, according to, I think most poskim is that she would be tameh deraisa.
A very hard day lifting heavy stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. That we'll talk about when we read this inside. So the Rambam, some say who would hold that that's the Raisa, some say he would be the Rabbanan, but the Rashba, the Trumas Hadeshin, holds that it's for sure it's mashma, it's the Raisa. Gos Maimonides, name of the Maram, says it's the Rabbanan. The Taz over here says that if she was checking herself with a piece of cotton, let's say she knows it was clean before, that's called boduk, it was checked for her, and now she sees his body, then obviously that makes her a deraisa. This is a very important point, by the way, when a woman checks herself versus in that spot inside versus just finding a stain in her underpants. Because even though it's her underpants, you say, well, it couldn't have come only from there. No, not necessarily. Maybe that stain she has on her underpants was from last time. It just didn't come off. How does she know? So don't assume just because it's in her underwear. Well, of course, it depends on the color and the size. When we talk about stains, we will see that size matters, color matters, and the material where it is found matters. But if she actually puts something inside her body and then she takes it out and she sees blood, well, obviously that's going to make her tummy. And the Taz says if that's a cotton that was completely clean, even though she didn't feel anything coming out, she would be deraisa, the Taz says. But if the cotton was not clean, she's not sure, she doesn't remember that she grabbed something clean or not, then it's a derabbanan. So anyway, there appears to be somewhat of a difference amongst the poskim between checking herself and then seeing blood after urinating, or seeing blood after being with her husband, whether it will be a deraisa or a derabbanan. Again, we're machmir in any way that she's probably unclean. And according to many of the Rishonim, she would be unclean midaraisa, even though there was no hargasha, only because it could be that she's sensing the hargasha and calling it something else. That's all. Okay, so let's just see the first seif inside. It's a short seif. Isha sheroat tipat dam tzicha leshev shiv'a nekiim. That's the heading of the Siman, that a woman who sees even a drop of blood today has to sit 7 nekiim. As we explained before, that today the halacha is very different as opposed to what the halacha is midoraisa, because today we have extra chumras that are from rabbinic origin, that women should not make mistakes, whether she's a zava or she's a niddah, she forgot to keep track of the time, what time of the month is this a regular period, or is this another discharge, and so therefore, even a tipa dam, as we will see later on, this applies to ketem too, just a ketem is always the rabbanon. We also learned that out from the pasuk. It says dam, it doesn't say ketem. So with ketem there would be with a stain there would be leniencies. But anyway, a woman who sees even a tipat dam would have to sit the shiva nikim. So the mechaber says like that. Let's just read this one seif. Isha sheyatzat dam mikora, a woman who has blood coming out from the uterus, the mikor, ben beones ben beratzon, tme'ah, whether it happened by accident or whether it happened naturally. I'm translating here the word ratzon naturally, even though the word ratzon means willingly. A woman doesn't see blood willingly. So here, obviously, the word ratzon means normal, naturally. She's tmeya. Now, the Mechaber says, on condition vehu shetargish b'yetziato. So here he's telling us the din of the Torah, which he does many times. He tells us what the din of the Torah is, and then, we find out later on the halacha is that today makes no difference, even if she didn't feel. But here he's telling us the din of the Torah, as long as she feels b'yetziato, when it comes out. However, from the moment she actually feels that it left the uterus, even though she doesn't see it come out yet, she's already unclean. Even though the blood hasn't exited yet. Even though she didn't see just a drop of blood, not a lot. Like the seed of a mustard seed, Yoshevet alav shiva nikim, she's going to sit on that 7 nikim after the blood stopped. And today, after the blood stopped means after 5 days, 4 or 5 days. The minimum. That's right. Sometimes it could be 6. Yeah. Now, so what is this ben be'ones ben beratzon? What's honest? A woman can see blood because she jumped. She did exercise. She flew on a plane. And the pressure changes. Caused her to see blood. Then comes the question of dam chimud, which we spoke about before. Dam chimud means a woman gets excited. This is her night of the wedding. Or she got excited for other reasons. There could be all kinds of reasons where a woman gets very excited and she's just longing to be with her husband. That's called chimud, desire, passion. There's something called dam that comes out of chimud. Yeah. A woman can all of a sudden see blood the night of her wedding, under the chuppah. I feel bad for her dress if it goes through all, but anyway. For her too. Yeah. Because that's called a chupat niddah. It happens, It does happen. Not very often. Why not more often than not? Because today a lot of women regulate themselves with pills before they get married. Otherwise they have, it used to be that you have to check, what date can we get married on? No, not on this day. You're going to wait and ask her, what if you want to make invitations 2 months ahead, 3 months ahead? It's very hard sometimes to figure it out. So they sometimes try their best to regulate it so it doesn't happen that they get their period on the chuppah night. Then otherwise you have to separate the chassan and the kala from each other for a little while. Huh?
Before they were.
Yeah, they can't be intimate. I mean, that's
the difference, because the other problem.
They can eat sheva brachas together, each one sitting whatever, but they can't be in the same room, same house, whatever, by themselves. That is, by themselves. With somebody else, yeah. The man, he with somebody else. Share a bedroom somewhere else, but not with his wife until she goes to the mikveh. So that's called chupat niddah. It can happen. And how could it happen? It could happen not necessarily from her period. It could happen be'ones. What's an example of ones? An accident? Yeah. Jumping. Exercise. Isn't there an expression in English called horsing around? Now, why did they say horsing around? Is it because she was... Does that have anything to do with the horses? Yeah? She went ahead and horsed around, maybe, right? I don't know what she did. Exercise. Rode a bike. I don't know. And then that could be honest. So, you know what he tells us here? It makes no difference. So that's a very important nekuda here, is because people think, only the period blood. No, it's not so much that period blood. It's blood that comes from the Mikvaot that matters here. And that blood that comes from the Mikvaot can happen at other times of the month. It can happen because of an ones, or it could happen because of dam chimud. It could happen from all kinds of situations other than her period. The only question is, will that dam chimud make her tameh? It looks like, from what I see, that the majority of Muslims say, why not? If everything if what matters to us is where it came from, then what difference does it make how it came about? So dam chimud, according to most poskim, would be tameh, would render the woman tameh even though it's not her period. So any dam that comes from the core, be'ones beratzon, it's me'ah abat as long as she felt it.
17 days, correct?
What?
The dam.
Well, it all depends. In this case, let's say she only has blood for 1 day, right? It would be 4 or 5 plus 7. So it's 11 or 12 days. Right? And the Ramah adds, Kashizbaer Mishpatan Lekaman Siman Kuf Tzadik Vav, as we will see later on in Siman Kuf Tzadik Vav, how those 7 days or when they begin. ואין חילוק בין פנויה לנשואה, there's no difference between a single girl or a married girl, לעניין איסור נידה. People should not take it lightly. As soon as a woman sees blood, is single, if she's young, she's a niddah.
So who does single when she's young?
I'll tell you in a minute. כי כל הבעל הנידה חייב כרת, we said before, anyone who's involved intimately with a niddah is חייב כורס. Unless he does tshuva, of course. Chorus is chorus. This is not just any. This is worse than eating non-kosher food, which is, of course, wrong. It's against the Torah, but it's a lav, a lo ta'aseh, on which there's, somebody would intentionally get lashes and so forth. This is chorus, and it affects the children also. The type of children of people. It affects many areas of a person's life if he's not careful with this. So he says here whether she's single or married. Why would I think any differently? Well, because some people might take it, okay, she's not married, I can touch her, hug her, kiss her, dance with her. No, chas v'shalom. First of all, she's a niddah.
Around with her, no? I mean,
Well, depends in which society.
in that society that she...
That's not necessarily.
Where
No.
you want to-
Why is he saying this? Because unfortunately, the only reason he said it is because there have been people who have taken the liberty to do things to a young girl that is not appropriate. 15, 17. Okay? Now, we're not talking about your sister here, or your mother, or your grandmother, right? Or your daughter. That's permissible.
It's not affected.
That is not affected by Niddah, no.
So there's no tuma.
Well, of course there's Tumah, but the Tumah of Niddah, it all depends, okay? Today we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, you're not a
That's what I
Kohen.
was going to
You don't
ask.
have to be
Truma.
concerned with that. Right, exact, Truma, yeah.
She'll be,
Oh yeah, I mean, sure, you would have to be careful. There were there were groups of people who they didn't let a Niddah come to shul. And a Niddah doesn't go to the cemetery. It's better not to, for all kinds of Kabbalistic reasons. So there are traditions, but there's no Isser. But here we're talking about young men who, as a result of being involved with girls who are not their immediate close relatives, can, God forbid, come to sin as a result of contact. And it's not just sin, because there's no chuppah and kedushin between them. She's a niddah. And guess what? There's a halacha that women who are not married should not go to the mikveh.
Right.
Why? She says, I'm not going to be a niddah. And if she's not going to be a niddah, she's going to allow herself to get close to people. So therefore, we don't allow young girls who are not married to go to the mikveh for this. In the past, there were times like Erev Yom Kippur, things there were that some women who were not married went. But today the halacha is we don't let them go because of that. The Chachamim were concerned. The society, unfortunately, well, not society. In general, human beings throughout the history in this particular area have weaknesses. And dancing together without mechitza, looking at each other, doing things, leads to sin. So here, it's not only going to lead to sin, it's going to lead to sin with a niddah.
So, l'chayra chances, she has the din of a niddah.
Exactly. So long as a woman... Now, let's say a woman never went to the mikveh and she's 75 years old. She's no longer having her period. But she never went to the mikveh. So she has still her tumah from age 11 or 12, or whenever she first had it. It never left her. So any woman who becomes a balas tshuva at a later age would still have to go at least once to the mikveh, even though she's past menopause. As it is, the halacha says a Baal Tshuva should go to the mikveh once he becomes a Baal Tshuva, in the same way a ger becomes a ger. He goes. So a Baal Tshuva should go to the mikveh. But that's for purity reasons. But a woman who becomes a Baal Tshuva and she knows she never went to, she should go at least once to cleanse herself of all the tumah.
Strangers, total strangers.
Yeah.
And she happens to touch it inadvertently.
Yeah, inadvertently it doesn't.
You go, you buy something cashier,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is no transvertent?
No, tumah is tumah. But you're not committing an isser. You're not starting off with. No, tumah is tumah. Niddah is a heavy duty tumah.
So there is
Yeah.
a transfer of tumah inadvertent.
Yeah. Remember, the tumah of a niddah is not the same as the tumah of a mace.
Because,
Yeah,
for
this-
instance, in the markets, a lot of
Right.
the young ladies who work there aren't married.
Yeah.
Yet,
Right.
or aren't married. It could come to a when it gets
Sure.
touched.
Sure.
And then
Yeah. Yeah. A man that is intimate with a niddah
forget it.
is his tumah is much heavier. It's like the niddah herself than just touching.
But
Right.
if he goes to the house,
Yes. It's May mace today because we don't have the red heifer. We don't have the ashes.
So
Right.
he's not going to...
Today, no. No, today no.
It's different
Yeah.
tumah. It's not the tumah on Niddah, it's not the same.
No, but what he's saying is today we're anyway.
We're anyway too many.
So we
Yeah,
cannot,
it's
we
a different-
cannot,
It's a different tumah.
right,
It's
but
not
we
the same
cannot, we
thing.
cannot get rid of it.
The tumah mace we can't get rid of, but can.
But you're
Different
still left
type
with
of
tumas
tumah.
mace. You're left with a much heavier form of tumah. The
Why is it heavier?
mace is
It's just from how it can.
no, it's the amount of time you have to wait till become clean.
Fine. Still a different
Right.
category. Why would I stop worrying about?
Because you can't enter the Beis Hamikdash, the area of the Beis Hamikdash
We
today.
don't have
Because
Beis
even if you went to the
So
mikvah,
wait a second. So you're saying that if
No, you
let's
right
say-
now you
let's
can't
assume I'm married and
right.
my wife is not, and I'm
Right.
just going to touch her hand. So since I'm too much mace, I don't worry about that.
no, you still have to worry
Why?
because you cannot intentionally commit a lav. And here some say
Just for a good reason.
no. The harchakas that we'll be talking about, some of them are deraisa and some of them are derabanan. Because it says, "Ilisha benidata lo tikrav," you can't get close. Close does not just mean intimate. You can't intentionally do anything that's
So
affectionate.
that's only
No, anybody. Anybody, not just a husband. You cannot be affectionate. You cannot be intimate with her. So certain things are by rabbinic decree, like shake her hand.
to the husband.
Right. You can't shake her hand either. But even though one may be rabbinic, one could be deraisa, makes no difference. You can't intentionally do it. Just like a kohen today can't go into a cemetery intentionally. But he's already tama anyway. No. A kohen has a tzivui from the Torah not to be metame.
Even with tumah.
Any tumah. He has to be careful.
Even though he's
Yeah.
chazak and
Right.
he's tied with
Yeah.
tumah mace,
Yeah.
never go into a cemetery.
With tumah mace, that's where the isur is actually. But he has to be careful from any tumah. But any tumah, we can't be too careful today. But with tumah mace, he has a sivu. We don't have that sivu. You can go to the cemetery, you can pick up the dead body, right? But with Niddah, we do. Either the halacha is midaraisa or the halacha is midrabanan. So therefore, regardless of how tama you are already, we still have that prohibition. All right, we'll stop over here. Continue next week.